Hello, and welcome to another video. In this video, we're playing some Dirty Fighting Gunslinger, and we immediately get jinxed by the chat. We do actually end up losing this match, but this match still has a lot of useful things for me to talk about, so I decided to upload it anyway. Usually I wouldn't upload like something like this because it's relatively boring, nothing really is happening, and we'll probably just be like, oh man, I wish I had a game like that. Yeah, me too. I was playing AoE for like 4 or 5 games straight. I'm still doing like pretty much comparable damage and the leagues above everybody else, but it just didn't, I don't know, trying to play AoE spec into single target, it just doesn't hit the same. You could definitely be doing a lot more damage when you play single target, especially when there's matches that are single target. And most single targets specs, or at least single target builds that have like AoE available to them, still do pretty good AoE damage. Obviously, if I was running the AoE tactical here, it would definitely do more damage here, and there's a couple other AoE things that I wanted to try, but never got around to. So we end up settling for Ultrav Violet. So we're playing Ultrav Violet in this match, and we're playing full single target. There's not a single AoE talent that I'm taking, and with Ultrav Violet, I'm just purely focused on my single target burst and my crit damage on my cool. At least when I have my ability on X. It's called like Hot Streak or something. It's been a little bit since I played Dirty Fighting. I was playing some MM matches, and I played the AoE variant, which is a little bit different, like rotationally, than virulence, or not virulence, but ultraviolet, if that makes sense. So the main thing that you want to be thinking about when you're playing ultraviolet, and also just in general for virulence, is that you want to have all your dots up all the time. So typically what you're thinking about is corrosive dart into corrosive grenade. Corrosive grenade will spread your corrosive dart. If you're playing lethality, it's a little bit different. That's spread by toxic haze, and corrosive grenade does not spread. It only, you know, it's an AoE basically. It kind of works the same for virulence, but virulence corrosive grenade will actually spread the corrosive dart too. So that's one thing to think about. So if you do have dart on one person, you can pretty much use one set dots to spread to everybody if people do get close enough to that person. So in general, just like dotting everybody and dot spreading in general is just super easy on virulence. It's probably the easiest class in the game to do so because it's got a range spread. Anyway, getting into trying to optimize your damage. Really, you want to be using your offensive cooldowns all the time. You want to capitalize on your melee taking CC, melee taking damage. People just being preoccupied in general, and if it's not hitting you, that's what you want to take advantage of. As a ranged DPS, you should always be thinking about, oh, this melee player is frontline, you know, like these people are creating space for me. I need to capitalize on it, because if you're not capitalizing on it, eventually they're going to be hitting you instead. And when they're hitting you instead, your damage is going to go down, no matter how good you are. It's just the way range is designed in this game. Melee is a little bit different because they're always going to be hit. Like, they're never not going to be hit most of the time, so they're better designed with instant abilities to basically be more playable under pressure. So outside of getting dots on everybody using my down explosion and cool on cooldown, I'm trying to do a sweeping gunfire. I am not optimizing my cool, let alone my hemorrhaging blast, which is my down explosion, as much as I should be, but I wasn't really taking the game seriously until I started realizing that, you know, hey, I can make the most of this anyway. It's definitely practice for me, but also I could use this as a learning example for other people. Definitely, you want to maximize your damage. So ultimately, reason why you want to use cool all the time is because it takes your dots, but also down explosion is just a good amount of damage. And then you would use suppressive fire over sniping twice, because hitting that many people, not only does it look good, it's going to be more damage than sniping twice in a single target, especially when there's a tank involved. And also just in general, predation being involved, that does mean that you're going to have a good chance at missing. So if you're just hitting more targets, you will hit in general more. So going into like things other than that, you should really just think about like, hey, how can I dot spread, or like who still needs dots? So when you actually are using suppressive fire, you don't actually have to have a target, so you can cycle through your targets while you're casting that. So that's another thing that's really nice about that. And in general, your best target's going to be Mercenary and Marauder, and the reason why you want those as targets because they have the lowest defense chance. Sorcerers will be the highest, and Assassin, of course, so Inquisitors will have 10%. So typically, you'll see me attacking the Mercenary a lot and the Marauder a lot, and that's simply just because they have the lowest defense chance when Predation's not active, and then when Predation is active, they're still the lowest defense chance, so I'll still be going for them. Now, another thing I want to talk about, side note to this, is that I played some 589 crit APPT recently. That means I was playing 5,431 alacrity, and that means 1.3 GCD AP. Now, if none of you remember from last expansion, that's pretty much the only thing I played, and it felt really smooth and I really enjoyed it. And it's still very much so enjoyable. It is noticeable to play lower and it is noticeable to play higher. One of the main differences is obviously the smooth ability, basically. This is like smoothed out gameplay. Game feels more responsive with higher alacrity. But that's generally a given because you're able to do more actions per minute. So to give you an example, like being able to use alternative means instead of like, let's say, sweeping slash to pull people out of stealth, I can more so consistently pull people out of stealth with grenades or other things. So like when somebody stealths, like I immediately know where they are, throw a grenade there, I will pull them out of stealth. Even have a game like that I was considering uploading, but I don't really know if you guys are too interested in it. It's obviously a match that we lose, but we completely like stomp them. It is against another Premade and playing like 3 DPS, I think. Normally I don't do that, but I wanted to play that troll build. I wanted to play with 589 critical to see what it could do. It is not a serious build. It is lower damage than just playing a normal build. It is not something I would recommend to anyone because it is relatively bad. The only reason I'm able to do damage on it is really just knowing the class and being, in general, just really comfortable with the class. That's more so like, hey, I'll do this amount of damage pretty much all the time just because I am able to play it. Not like gear doesn't matter as much at that point. So gear does matter. Don't take it the wrong way. It totally does matter, but there is a point where even with bad gear, you can pretty much pull around the same number just because of experience. Obviously, too, there is a problem with DPS in general. DPS is just so high nowadays that there is a wall that you kind of hit where you can't really push further because there's not enough to hit. You'll end up wiping the enemy team, and there just won't be any way to fight, or people will refuse to fight, or you just can't fight, or they'll die, and obviously there's downtime in between them respawning and you coming back and hitting them. So it is something to definitely think about. So like the full potential of most DPS are just almost impossible to hit because of that. And it's always kind of been that way, but it's never been to the point where you can actually hit it to the point where people are dead, if that makes sense. It's usually you dying. Like if you ever get a chance where you can just number farm like that, you usually end up dying beforehand because the survivability, and like TTK in general, wasn't like super crazy, but it wasn't much different than what we currently have. I know a lot of people will say, oh, TTK is too long, or oh, TTK is too short. Well, yes, on certain specs it's definitely too short. So for example, APPT, its ability to kill is definitely overtuned. And then other classes, TTK is relatively good, and other, like some classes are kind of not great. But in general, a lot of them are not like super crazy. Killing somebody is not too hard, and there's a lot of optimal ways to do it. Some classes are just never been good at doing it, and some classes are just good at doing it. So it is, in general, usually around the same TTK as other expansions outside of APPT and Rage Juggernaut. Their burst right now is so incredibly high that it is probably one of the fastest TTK we've ever had ever since like 2.0. 2.0 was actually really fast in some situations. And even like 3.0, when we had APV with no global cooldown on shoulder cannon, that was super obnoxious. And also you can even think about deception from last expansion, triple ball. Like there's been a lot of times that we've had really fast TTK, and the argument between TTK is generally just a argument between skill tiers of players. So for the most part, people that think the TTK is too long are not very good players. No offense to them, I'm just saying you guys are not doing optimal damage. If you guys were doing more damage, you would realize how wrong you actually are. Those people that think it's too short, yeah, in a way, sometimes you're right, but not always are you right. You do have to think about all the classes in general. There are some classes that are just not performing, but again, you know, that is a class issue. The trinity between the tank, healer, and DPS is broken. And that's something that they should probably tackle first, because that's really what's going to fix the game in general for like TTK. Personally, I feel like we should be in like 400 gear score. We should probably have like 500,000 health. I think we should have better gear. We should have more stat points. People should be able to go high alacrity. People should be able to afford accuracy without griefing their stats too bad. We should have a lot more than what we currently have, and healers should be stronger instead of weaker. Tanks are doing way too much. One, they're doing an incredible amount of damage. Two, they have crazy taunt uptime with this expansion. And three, in general, they just have way too many things they can do. They have pretty much the most CC outside of like PT, but even though PT never really had like a crazy amount of CC outside of Carbonize, but them not being able to as reliably take all their CC, I guess is a nice thing, right? But you know, as Juggernaut, you've got backhand, you got force push, you got choke, and I'm pretty sure you have the option to take fear. I don't remember. But in just typical fashion, you know, double hard stun on Juggernaut is kind of excessive, but I can understand it. It's like a force push or a force choke. I feel like that should be just a thing. Like, he should be kind of forced to pick that. That would help with the CC, and then also you've got Assassin, which I do think specs should be on cooldown, or not on cooldown, but like on like baseline without having to select it. But also at the same time, I do think like things like what do you call it, like longer shroud should exist, but it doesn't. What's the other thing? Whirlwind and electrocute. I'm glad Whirlwind's not really a thing. People can't really afford it, and I think it should stay that way. Like, you should have to give up something pretty good for Whirlwind. And I think electrocute is like kind of okay. Like 2 stuns, or even if it's like a soft CC and 1 stun, I think that should be like the fine balance. There's a lot of classes out there that don't even have a hard stun. So for example, I can't really afford my hard stun on Sniper, and even if I could, I probably wouldn't take it because it's not very good. Now, I would take my flashbang if I had the option to take it. I would totally take that. But I'm kind of glad that it's gone. Like, for example, Operative has their flashbang and hard stun. I don't like that they have their hard stun. Or, I mean flashbang. Personally, it's going to become more opinionated as I go, but in general, tanks have, at least usually I guess Juggernaut, have more CC available, and generally just lower cooldown CCs, more impactful CCs, which is okay, I guess, but it leads into the power dynamic of them just being able to, 1, control better, 2, not only able to split damage to somebody, but able to mitigate damage pretty well because they didn't really get any pruning for survivability, and they pretty much have their full kit for survivability still. Which I do agree with. The only problem is that a lot of classes actually lost some of their survivability, and that hurts the DPS, but also makes the tank's role even more important. And then once you throw in healing not really changing, it's just like, okay, well, that's one thing. And then most of the damage for all the tanks have gone up. There are some cases where the single target damage has actually gone down, looking at like Deception, or not Deception, Darkness. So a lot to think about. The Trinity, tank, heal, DPS definitely need change. Anyway, hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day.